Yeah, I mean, I think these things are part of the pillar. When I was studying motivation and motivational science, these three things are the pillars of healthy motivation. Knowledge is, unless you've been living under a rock, you've known over time that exercise is health and movement is health. And for some people, just knowing that is enough.
Are you in the 35% of people who meet the physical activity guidelines for muscle strengthening activity? Do you lift weights? Well, if you're listening to this podcast, I'm guessing that you do, or at least you're interested in starting, which is awesome. And today's special guest is going to talk to us all about that. Dr. Jordan Metzl is an internationally recognized sports medicine physician, researcher, and best-selling author. He practices at Hospital for Special Surgery in New York City, the world's premier orthopedic hospital. He lectures around the world, researches topics on injury prevention and performance optimization, and founded the first physician-led fitness community, Iron Strength, back in 2010. His book is what interests me. It's called Push: Unlock the Science of Fitness Motivation to Embrace Health and Longevity. Yes, fitness motivation. So many of us know that we should be moving daily or should be exercising, lifting weights, getting some aerobic activity, but so many lack the motivation. And I want to dig deep into why that is and how we can turn that around for ourselves. Because we know it's great for us, we know we should do it. Wouldn't it be nice if motivation followed along, or if we knew how to motivate ourselves? I'll be asking him questions about that today. So let's welcome Dr. Jordan to the podcast. We talk about longevity, aging well as we age. We think about being able to do all of the things in our 80s, 90s, and 100s that we want to do. And so often we need to then make sure that we're doing things in our 40s, 50s, 60s to lead us up to that. But one of the things you say about longevity is that it is being oversold. So I want to start with that question first, but before I say that, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. And it's wonderful to be here. And I think your point is exactly spot on, that what you do now, the deposits into your bank when you're 30, 40, 50, 60 will basically be withdrawals when you're 70, 80, 90, and 100. And you want to make sure you're making as many good deposits as you can on a daily, weekly, and monthly basis. So then when it comes time to basically flip take some of what you've accrued out of the bank account, you got money in there. Yeah. And you have built up good credits over time.
Yeah, absolutely.
That being said, I am increasingly very skeptical of the modern day longevity science movement, because I feel like it's selling a lot of hype and a lot of false promises built on a lot of fear. And so, to me, when we talk about longevity, how long we will live for, we've done amazing things in longevity since the mid 1800s. If you were alive in the late 1800s, your life expectancy was about 41 years old. Yeah. If you're alive today, your life expectancy is almost double that. Now, that didn't come because you were doing red light therapy or peptides. That came because of vaccines and antibiotics and sanitation, and those things made a huge difference. And so when we talk about longevity, it's very important to distinguish between longevity and healthy longevity. And I want to really point that difference out at the top, because I feel like that's what people have to think about. Not how do I make myself live longer? How do I make myself live healthily as long as possible? That's what I'm after.
Yeah. I was just going to say, I would love to hear what you are on a mission to do with your work. When you look at your Instagram account, when you read some of your books, it is very clear to me, that mission, but I'd love our audience to hear what you're on a mission to do.
Sure. So my mission is to get people to live as healthily as long as they possibly can. And I think one of the misnomers of longevity and longevity science is it has the veneer that it's only for rich people, that if you can afford this treatment,
right,
then you'll live a healthier, longer life. And that's not true at all. If you look at the blue zones of the world, where people routinely live over 90 years of age, they're not especially wealthy, but they have the commonalities of things that make people live healthily longer, which is, the things we know about diet and sleep and exercise and community, and how you can put those into your life. Will peptides or red light therapy or whatever else make a difference around the margins? Maybe. But, when I give lectures to groups on this exact subject, I have a picture of a guy riding a Colnago. And this guy's a little bit overweight, and he's kind of stuffing himself into his bike clothes. I'm an avid biker, among other things, and he's stuffing himself into his bike clothes and his guts hanging out. And he's got one of these $15,000 beautiful racing bikes from Italy, and he wants to bike as fast as possible. And I love this guy and his desire to want to bike as fast as possible. I want everybody to be the best version of themselves. But before this dude throws down all that money on a Colnago, he's got to think about, what's my weight? What's my power? What's my muscle mass? What's my conditioning? Those are 95% of the battle. And maybe the last 5% is the Colnago or the expensive bike. And so people want to start with the expensive bike because it's easy just to go out and buy a bike.
Right.
My message is let's focus on the things that can make a big difference in your life and maximize your healthy longevity. So everything I've done as a doctor, as a fitness instructor and creator, as an author, as a speaker, I try and really give the same message, which is that you can control so much of your health span or healthy longevity by the things you do every day.
It is easy to go out and just buy the bike, buy the peptide, buy the next supplement. Why do we opt for that instead of doing the other things that you mentioned?
Because we're humans, and we basically, many people gravitate towards, the easiest flow, the easiest direction. When I started, and I know we'll talk about my newest book, Push, which is about motivation. When I started researching and examining and talking to my patients about decision making, and I wanted to better understand motivation, why people choose to do the harder thing versus the easier thing. And I initially had thought that motivation was a lot about some people were motivated and some people weren't motivated. I don't think that's true anymore. What I think is the people who are consistently motivated over time have figured out a way to make what they want to do and what they do the same, meaning they lower the cost to act. They make the least resistance the thing they want to do, be it go to the gym or strength train or whatever it is they want to do. And I find that to be very powerful in terms of thinking about how they can make these actions that they're looking to do part of their life. And so they need to think strategically about how do I do that over my lifetime?
Yeah. So how do they do that over their lifetime? It's I agree with that. Excuse me, the conversation about motivation, because as a trainer, and I had been a trainer for about 15 years before I started my online company and developed the membership. But I would always think like I would train some people that were in it for the long haul. And I loved that. I would see them flourish and change and set goals and reach goals. And just, they had an identity of moving daily. And then there were those I could just tell. I would do an intake with people, seeing why they wanted to start now, like what was the reason that they had to start today with me. And I almost could thin slice, like Dr. Malcolm Gladwell talks about, I could thin slice who was going to stick with it and who wasn't. But what in your expertise is that defining factor? What makes us stick with it? What makes us not?
Well, some people, like I think you and me, we're just wired that way. Like I'm wired to move. I have been since the day I was born. I am a moving kind of guy, and every part of my life, my brain, my body functions better when I move. So for me, it's kind of a non-negotiable. And for some of the patients I take care of as a sports medicine doctor, it's non-negotiable. But there are many other people, I'd probably say most people, who struggle with finding the consistency of movement and how to make that part of their routine. And so for those people particularly, but even for everybody, you have to figure out how you lower your cost to act. So I write a lot about this term, lower your cost to act. It's a behavioral economics term that comes out of the Wharton School of Business at the University of Pennsylvania, has a subdivision called the Center for Behavioral Economics, where they look at what changes people's behavior patterns and what does it take to change your behavior pattern. And honestly, not that much. But looking at some of these concepts of minimal things like prepaying sessions with a personal trainer or getting new exercise clothes or joining a gym that you want to go to or that may be on the way home from your commute or joining a community or joining a walking group or setting a goal for yourself that's a little bit in the future that scares you a little bit. Like, for example, this year I'm doing a big mountain bike race with my brother that scares the hell out of me because I'm afraid of going downhill mountain biking, but it's pushing me to get ready to do that kind of stuff. And so I think the key is, how do you figure out how to lower your cost to act so you can make the change you want to have happen actually happen? And I'm wondering, in your past life as a trainer, you probably had people that prepaid sessions with you that just showed up because they'd already committed and they'd committed financially to you, which makes a difference.
Sure. Yeah, it absolutely does make a difference. But there was the subset that basically did it maybe because they knew they should do it, but they didn't have the desire. There was no emotional connection. There was no why, to continue on. And now, of course, we try to help paint that picture of the crucialness of it, but also help people identify their own reason for moving daily. How do you work with people who know they should, but don't feel like they don't want to? They don't want it.
Yeah, so I think that gets to this concept of compliance. Like, what do we get to do for people? Because what I'm after is, yes, I want you to be active next week and I want you to be active next month, but I want you to be active next year. I want you to be active 10 years, 20 years, 30 years down the road. And some people have that. And when you look at what keeps people, and there have been a number of studies looking at exercise compliance, meaning sticking with the exercise or movement routine over your life, over many years. And the number one factor for exercise compliance is fun. That's the number one factor. People actually enjoy what they're doing. They smile. Some people just are not going to smile when they're doing something, but it's a very small minority. I think the experience that I've had, so one of the things I've been lucky enough to do is I started my own fitness community. I started 15 years ago because I'd been talking to patients about exercise, but I had one world as a doctor where I was taking care of broken things in people. And then I had a world of exercise where I was going out and doing all these things. And I noticed that in the medical world, we were kind of fixing broken. In the fitness world, we were promoting healthy. And I thought, well, that's silly. We should basically have the medical world be working on promoting healthy as well. Why are doctors only when it's broken? So I said, the only way to start doing this is actually to start prescribing it myself. So I started really small in the basement of a gym. I had like 15 people, probably the worst playlist of all times. No idea how to put together a fitness class. It was terrible. But over time, have grown this program. And the benefit of what I think I'm able to do is they're always free. And now last year I think we ran 28 classes last year. We had over 13,000 people up and moving in our area. And we do small ones, we do big ones, we do really big ones. We activate over 1,000 people 3 times a summer up on the flight deck of an aircraft carrier in the Hudson River. And what I found is that I can really manifest and prescribe fun and community. That's what I'm prescribing. Exercise is almost secondary. That what I'm prescribing is fun and community, and that's what keeps people going. And so when people think about what they're doing, what they want to do, I think the first question they should ask themselves is, what do I like doing? What do I like to do? Now, if you like sitting on the couch eating Oreos, we have to discuss that. But generally speaking, you have to figure out what do you like to do, and that will lead to what I can be consistent with doing over my life.
Well, I think that's why pickleball has taken off so much, because it is fun and people enjoy themselves and they're laughing, and it's the connection and community, like you said. I like fun first. And as you were saying that, I just thought about too, a lot of people don't like strength training. I recall training 3 women. One of them hated it. She only came because of her friends, and we tried to make it fun for the 3 of them doing a circuit. They were like in their 60s when we were training, but she hated it. And so even noting that the minimal effective dose for strength training can be that 2 times a week, right? And then you can fill in the rest of your week of movement with things that are really fun for you. Thoughts on that?
I think there are some people where no matter what you do, they're not going to love it. That's true. You can't make everybody love everything. I hate peanut butter, for example. I think it's disgusting. Most people love peanut butter. I used to have jelly sandwiches when I was a kid going to camp. I've always hated peanut. I love peanuts, hate peanut butter. So there are some people that are going to hate peanut butter. There's some people that are going to hate strength training. But generally speaking, most people don't dislike it. They just don't know how to do it. And they don't have an environment where they can do it. It's different than going for a walk. Like you go outside, you go for a walk, whomever you are, you go for a walk. But strength training requires more nuance. It requires some more knowledge. I think those kind of things you want to start, thinking about how I can learn about it, how I can make it the best for where I am. And I think one of the pieces also is like, as you structured it with, 2 other women in the same age demo, that definitely helps. But one of the other things that I'm big into is that in all my books, I've included exercises and in push as well that people can do on their own wherever they are. They don't need a gym. It's just body weight. Body weight is so tremendously effective. One of the things I talk about at the top is not only health span and lifespan, but also muscle span, the importance of building and maintaining your muscle mass across your lifespan, which leads to health span. So I'm big into keeping your muscles, which is a big piece that we're increasingly recognizing the importance of muscle, not only for movement, but for health.
So if a woman is listening right now and she's in the camp that doesn't really want to do exercise, but knows that she wants to get into it, how does she start to lower her cost to act? What are some of her first steps?
Well, the first comment I would have is that at the front of my book, I have two quotes. And the first is from Gandhi: "You must be the change you wish to see in the world," right? So you have to commit to understanding you want to be different. That's the Gandhi. And then beneath it is a quote for me: "Commit to getting off your ass." That
I heard
basically
that.
you first have to commit to the idea you're going to do it,
Yeah.
because you can conceptualize it and visualize it, but if you don't commit to getting off your ass, it ain't going to happen. That's number one. And then I think if she does not come from a strength training background, and many women in their 60s, women
Mhm.
who are now in their 20s and 30s have grown up in a culture where women and muscles are like peanut butter and jelly, right?
For
Except
sure.
minus the peanut butter, but yeah, the peanut butter and jelly. So they're used to strength training as part of what they do. But
Mhm.
women in their 60s are having to learn. It's like learning all about how to operate Instagram if you're
True.
60, right?
Yeah.
Or TikTok. And like some people do it, but a lot of people are like, I don't know how to do that. I didn't grow up with that. It's not comfortable to me. And I think strength training is in that same milieu. And so how you teach people to start to learn about those types of things, I think that's really important. And so having the right person, having a trainer, maybe some sessions of one-on-one with a trainer who is not a 20-year-old with jacked muscles, but somebody who's in their 40s or 50s who understands working with your age demographic. I think that's really helpful to at least ease your way in. And I think one of the things I've noticed with strength training myself, and I don't know if you've noticed the same, that when you get comfortable doing it, then you get more comfortable sticking with it.
Hmm. Well, you build that self-efficacy, right? You build a belief that change is possible, and then you commit more time to the task because you see more change. So it is, and that creates adherence, right?
Absolutely. And confidence, which is I think the ultimate thing you're looking for, is that you believe you can do it, you emotionally feel like you can do it, and then you end up having the confidence that you can be doing it consistently.
Yeah. So why does confidence play such a huge part?
I think most people tend to do things that they're very somewhat confident in. It's rare that a person will put themselves in a completely uncomfortable position routinely. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that speaks to most people, are particularly, I would say, people over 50, 55, women who didn't grow up with strength training are very uncomfortable starting to do that because it's nothing they grew up learning how to do. And so learning a skill like that at 60 is uncomfortable. And so they may not
Sure.
feel confident doing that. But I think it's really important. We know that they're probably the group that needs it the most. And so trying
Yeah.
to overcome that barrier and to step into that world is really essential for them. And it's important to not make it, A, it's important to commit to getting off your ass, and B, it's important to commit, trying to figure out how to make it not intimidating at the same time. That you have to
Yeah.
have the desire, and you have to have somebody that can speak the language.
For a lot of people, the pandemic was actually a brilliant time to start online in-home training, right? In the comfort of their home where they didn't have to enter a gym yet. They got comfortable with some of the mechanics of lifting, some of the basics, the foundations, and then were able to segue back into public gyms because it can be totally intimidating for a lot of people. Although way more intimidated, I think, when I started 20 years ago in a gym. I did my first competition back in 1999. And yeah, thank God my husband was also into it as well, because I think that's probably the only reason that I felt confident going into a gym.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I'm curious how you learned about strengthening. It was part of what you did, because most women at that time weren't doing what you were
No.
doing. You were doing strengthen, like kind of body physique or bodybuilding or strength.
Yeah.
What were you doing?
So back in 1999, I had just had my second child. He's going to be 27. So it was that many years ago. And Quentin, my husband, one of our friends did a Body for Life competition. I don't know if you remember, that was
Sure.
like old school Body for Life. And he won. Our friend won. So I think he won $100,000. And I'm like, I want to win $100,000. So we both committed to doing it. And it was strict. Like I totally remember hating every minute of it. But I did see a good physique change after you commit for 3 months to try and lose weight and get jacked. Anyway, yeah, that took me into the gym and then I really enjoyed it. I had always been moving too, like a gymnast growing up, field hockey, soccer in college. So I was an athlete. So it wasn't a big jump, but the weights were like we didn't do that. And so just getting in there and then seeing how much my bicep muscles changed in a 3 month period. Of course, we adapt very well when we're in our 20s, and my body totally did. And I felt very confident. And yeah, it just propelled me on. And I
Yeah.
only competed once, like on the stage. In 2010, then I did a figure competition. But yeah, I'm like you, like I really love the process and feel dead inside if I don't move daily. Like I have
Yeah.
to do something and it fires me up. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm sorry. It's one of the
No, yeah.
comments I'd make off that is just that I think for all the parents and grandparents who may be listening, I really want to make the point that when I listen to your story, what I hear is I'm confident to put myself in a position where I may not be great, but I'm confident to go in and work through that. And I think that's one of the unique things that comes out of youth sport participation. That
Mm.
when I hear you talk about your history, you were a child athlete who then became
Mhm.
an adolescent athlete who then had the confidence from that. And I feel like one of the things we really have to think about is making confident young adults who are confident to go do things they may not be great at. And I deeply believe in the power of youth sports for giving people confidence to go out and make to put themselves in positions where they may not be super comfortable, which is what you did. And I think that part of the problem we've seen in the age of hyper specialization in youth sport, where kids are kind of becoming elite athletes in one particular sport, it may make them great at that sport, but we definitely see a higher risk of injury and burnout in kids who are specializing versus doing multiple sports.
Mm.
So I think it's important that we make sure that we keep our young people active, not only for physical health, but also for mental health and confidence, because that can carry in. When I hear your story, I hear somebody who was a young athlete who loved moving and was confident in moving, and so she put herself in a position where she would do that as an adult and an older adult. And so that's I think that all follows a trajectory that I think is important to call out.
Thank you. In your book, I read some stats here of like, I was going to ask, why do a lot of adults hate movement? And one of the stats that Dr. Metzl had posted in his book, Push, was that 52% of US adults meet the physical activity guideline for aerobic physical activity. Only 35% of US adults meet the physical activity guideline for muscle strengthening, and 28% meet the physical activity guidelines for both aerobic and muscle strengthening activities. If you're listening to this and you're in that percentage, it's quite substantial. That's amazing that you are, but the numbers, yeah, wow, 62%. Those are pretty high numbers, or pretty low numbers for people engaged in activity.
Yeah, and that's also a reflection of, ease of it's easier to go out and go for a jog than it is to go do some strength
Yeah,
training. And it's,
sure,
so ease of access makes a difference there as
sure.
well.
Yeah.
But people have to really commit to knowing they have to commit to getting off their ass. They have to do it, man. That they have to commit to becoming part of the process. And it's never too late to start. One of the nice things I was able to do in Push is I was able to interview a whole number of my patients who come into my office. The commonality of my waiting room, and I'm just seeing patients today, and I get to take a break and talk to you, is that my waiting room is everything. This morning I saw a 10-year-old gymnast and also an 82-year-old person that's training for a marathon. And the
Wow.
commonality of everybody that I see is they all want to move, and my job is to help keep them moving. And
Mm-hmm.
that's really gratifying, and a great chance to study some of these behaviors and try and figure out who sticks with this over time and what are some of the things that make a difference for them are.
You tell
Smiling is the most important.
well, that goes back to fun, right?
Yeah,
Fun and
absolutely.
happiness and all of that.
All.
You tell a story at the start of your book, Push, about a lady who came in with knee trouble. And you said, I slowly realized that the sore knee wasn't just a temporary ailment I could help cure. The knee was a conduit into the patient's entire life. Then you say the name for this is a narrative medicine where doctors take into account all of the things that make up a patient's medical story. What are you looking for in that narrative when you interview a patient, when you start to talk to them about why they're coming in with knee pain? What what are you trying to disclose? What are you trying to open up in them?
I'm so glad you pulled that passage up because you're actually the first person I've talked to that's pulled out that passage.
Yeah, I thought it was
Uh,
great.
and it spoke to you, and I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the idea of many specialists in any specialty may just see you as like a liver or a knee or an eye. But in my world, the knee, and I see a lot of knees in my office and try and get them all moving. A knee is a conduit to motion and movement. And if somebody's active, they are healthy for all the reasons I talk about. If they're inactive, as you kind of talked about with yourself, you feel like you're there, but you're not really there, right? So you can either ramp up or ramp down. And so when you think about the narrative medicine is just how all the different factors affect, in this case, a knee. That knee helps that person move, which helps them be a better mother or father or sister or brother or grandparent and or person in their community and person at their job. And so all of a sudden that knee affects so many different parts of their life that they may realize or not realize. All of our moods change so much if we can't get this medicine of movement into what we do. And so this knee has a lot of ramifications beyond just being a knee. And that's the concept of looking at the whole person instead of just looking at the particular piece.
Right. The knee, a healthy knee means, yeah, you're going out and getting connection, community, volunteering, going into your community sports, pickleball, whatever else. When you don't do that, then you're isolated, you're at home, you're by yourself. And those are risk factors. I know I just had Dr. Stephanie Rogers on. Isolation and loneliness is one of the 14 risk factors for dementia from the Lancet Commission.
I can't speak to that enough. That our society. I actually wrote an interesting op-ed for the New York Times about 4 years ago now, 3-4 years ago. It was during COVID, but the tail end of COVID, and we had a huge number of people that wanted to work remote. And we're working remote. And in the medical system, our lives didn't change. Everybody's lives changed around us, but our lives didn't change. We were seeing patients in person before. Sure. We're still seeing patients in person. But when I started looking at, as a person interested in movement, when I started looking at the effects of remote work at the beginning, when I was here seeing patients and I would do like a telemedicine visit with some dude in his like boat off the coast of South Carolina, I was like, man, my life sucks. Look at this guy. He's out on the boat doing his work, and I'm sitting here, and it's this. What am I doing? But over time, I've come to believe that I feel like remote work is one of the really negative health consequences of the pandemic. For some small people, it's been great. For a lot of people, I feel like they're less active, but more importantly, they're less connected. And I wrote an op-ed titled "Working from Home May Be Less Healthy Than You Think." And I went through the whole history of movement and why movement is imperative for health and why connection is important for health and why remote work takes away some of the movement. I talked about how with each technological advance, we've actually moved a little bit less from the bicycle to the car to the airplane to the computer to the smartphone, and that remote work is a natural extension of all these things, and that people are less connected and they're moving less. And I thought people were going to write in the comments, Dr. Metzl, thank you so much for this insightful op-ed. We really appreciate your insights. It was like 10-1. How dare you talk about remote work?
Don't take that away from us.
Exactly. It was as if I was literally slapping their mom. I mean, it was like 10-1. And I was shocked with the negative perceptions about people taking away remote work. But I think that work and structure, and I'd say structure, are very important for thinking about how these different topics interface and interact. So I do think that modern technology has made it easier to do less and move less, but our biological imperative to move is the same as it's always been.
I was just going to ask, what do you think that was all about with the comments from the audience?
I think people like to take the path of least resistance, and if sitting on your couch and we're working from your couch is the easiest, people like that. They didn't want to commute. They didn't want to, but built into that commute are steps and walking and taking the subway stairs. Not only intense exercise, variable intensity lifestyle physical activity, or VILPA. And we know that putting VILPA into your life makes you healthier, not doing burpees, but just taking the stairs and huffing and puffing from taking the stairs helps you 2 minutes a day. So I think that a lot of that stuff is taken away when you remote work.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's going to drop your overall calorie expenditure. I mean, it's going to impact your mood from being outside. Like all of those things will take a hit, which is, why when you even said the part about looking at her whole history about her knee and the story that's around it, I mean, all of that stuff comes into play as well, right? Like for the person that wants to stay at home and be on their computer and stay isolated inside, it's going to impact so much, not just their ability to move, but also their wellness, their longevity, the whole bit. It will be impacted.
Everything, everything.
Yeah. Yeah. In the book, also, you talk about consistent and healthy motivation comes from three things. You say knowledge. I should do this. I should exercise. Yes, of course. I think we're all in that camp, but it also comes from emotion. I want to do this. Not everyone's in that camp. And then belief. I can do this. Talk to us about why those three things are so important.
Yeah, I mean, I think these things are part of the pillar. When I was studying motivation and motivational science, these three things are the pillars of healthy motivation. Knowledge is, unless you've been living under a rock, you've known over time that exercise is health and movement is health. And for some people, just knowing that is enough. But for most people, not. For most people, just knowing it doesn't get the job done.
True.
Emotion, having an emotional response to something is something very difficult to kind of quantify. I feel this way about this. I feel this way about that. Why is that? What makes you feel a way when you see something or react to something? You can't always explain it, but that's what gets to the fun part that I was talking about, that we all like fun and we all like doing things that are fun. When I started teaching my fitness classes, I started teaching sprint and strength classes in Central Park here in New York City, and it was all runners and triathletes that did the same stuff that I did. Over time, I had people bring their kids and their parents and their grandparents. It became multi-generational, all sizes. We started branching out all different types of activities, yoga and Pilates and all kinds of stuff, dance and salsa. It was a lot of fun, and people they came for the fun. They came for the community. And that was an emotional response. I'm going to go to this class because it's fun. And then finally, confidence. We talked about, getting the confidence to basically learn how to do things like strength training. And if you're a woman in her 60s that didn't grow up strength training, the confidence piece is important to keep you going back. Because if you feel like you're terrible at it, you're not going to keep going for most people. And so there becomes a confidence in learning how to execute. So knowledge, emotion, and belief in myself, the confidence to do that. Those are three of the really important pillars on what I would consider to be a healthy motivational profile.
I think about identity a lot. We teach a lot about that. One of our little catchphrases was taken from Seth Godin. He's a marketer. Anyway, he said, people like us do things like this. And for me and Move Daily Fitness, that has just been like our top anthem, that people like us do things like this forever and ever. And that identity of becoming fit and healthy people is something that we really try to instill in the women that we work with. Talk to us about how important it is to create identity, and how do people go about doing that?
So identity is one of the transitions from I walk and I'm a walker, I bike and I'm a biker, I run and I'm a runner.
Sure.
And we know even in kids that when kids start doing a sport versus kids identify as an athlete doing that sport, it really changes for the good and sometimes for the bad. I see a lot of kids with repetitive use injuries, gymnasts who've ended up with stress fractures in their back because they've self-identified as a gymnast so much that they'll keep pushing through pain to get to unhealthy pain. So that identification of this is part of who I am and what I do really seems to change the threshold, which I think can be harnessed into a good for people. And you see it with all different types of people wearing brands of different fitness companies, different clothes or different communities. It really helps. That's why I think when, during the pandemic, it's a great test case. Some companies that didn't have like the online programming virtual already versus other companies that did, the ones that did mushroomed and the ones that didn't shriveled up, because it's great to watch it on demand bike class, but it's better to be in a real-time on demand bike class where you're biking with people from all over the world. So it's a different phenomenon.
Just shifting a little bit here and with your doctor hat on, talk to us what about inflammaging is. I had actually never heard that phrase before. I know what inflammation is, of course, and with our audience, this is something that we're concerned about, we think about, we don't want, because we know that it can lead to disease and decay. So I saw the term coined, inflammaging. What's that about? What is it?
That's great. And it can be pronounced either inflammaging or inflammaging. And
Inflammaging.
people,
Okay.
you'll hear it both ways.
Okay.
And the concept there is that the big three of chronic disease, heart disease, neurodegenerative diseases, cancer, but generally metabolic health, diabetes, etc. These problems are largely due to lifestyle. Now, Lance Armstrong was the most fit guy on the planet and he got testicular cancer. So it's not a one-to-one correlation, but in general, heart disease, neurodegenerative disease, metabolic disease, diabetes, and cancer, certain types of cancer, are very much related to the decisions we make over time. That's why I tell people you can greatly influence your health span, your healthy longevity by what you do. And inflammaging is the direct correlation of chronic inflammation to disease. Mm. Now, the downside is that if you sit around and you don't do anything over time, you build up inflammation on a cellular level in your body, which is expressed in achiness and lethargy and gaining weight. And on a cellular level, it's expressed in cellular decay, cellular turnover, and inflammation. And inflammation leads to disease. And so this concept that chronic inflammation leading to disease is important. But it's also important to know that activity and muscle and movement leads to the opposite, meaning that runners have a much less incidence of osteoarthritis and disease in general than non-runners. That you can build your activity profile and build your muscles, and that will lead to a healthier version of you. Now, does that mean you're going to live any longer? I hope so, but who knows? Does that mean that you're not going to have a chronic disease? I hope so, but who knows? But does that mean you're going to reduce your potential risk? Absolutely.
Right. Yeah. What are some of the biggest everyday habits that you see driving inflammation?
Well, inactivity is probably the biggest. So inactivity and lack of muscle are probably the two of the biggest, but also what you eat, processed foods, high sugary content foods over time, all those things. And again, I'm not an absolutist. I think like you did when you did your Body for Life, you loved what it looked like in the mirror. You loved the work that you did, but nobody wants to live like a monk.
Not sustainable. Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't look like fun. I mean, for most people, it's no fun to do that. So I think you have to balance out the fun piece with the what you want to do. And I love dessert. I love a hamburger. I love French fries sometimes. I don't have it every meal, but I love it. And so I want to balance out those things in my life. And I think most people feel the same.
I think so too. But let's talk about knees. On Instagram, I'll often put out workouts, right? So I'll do lots of beginner workouts that are knee friendly, but I'll also do a lot that have squats and lunges. And anytime I put out anything that looks like it's going to hurt someone's knees, multiple people in the comments say, I could never do that. That hurts my knees. How are you working with people who have knee issues, knee problems? What are some steps to take to begin to shift that?
Yeah, so knees are probably the most common thing that I see in my office. And number one, I'm a huge fan of the sumo squat. It's the easiest. You basically open up your feet like you're a ballet dancer. You have your feet nice and wide, wider than your shoulders. And people with hip replacements, knee replacements, arthritic hips, arthritic knees can generally do that. So shout out to the sumo squat as a wonderful thing to do. I always try and distinguish between healthy pain and unhealthy pain, meaning healthy pain is, if exercise doesn't hurt a little bit, you're not doing hard enough. But unhealthy pain is it's changing my mechanic of movement. It's really painful and I don't want to do it. And for that, you have to start thinking of what are the different modifications I can do, because I want you to build quads. I want you to build hamstrings. I want you to build glutes. Yeah. But if it's hurting a lot when you're doing it, you need to start to think about workarounds. And that's something that I do a lot, and I'm sure you do as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's looking for alternatives, starting slowly. But if you avoid training the vastus muscles, the calves, the quads, your knees aren't going to get better when you just avoid it, right? You have to.
They're going to get worse. They're going to get worse.
Strengthen those muscles.
And then you'll do less. And so that's why. And then the other piece of what I do in my office is I do a lot of trying to help modify the symptoms. And so I do a lot of injections of hyaluronic acid, which are these synthetic lubricants, which are kind of part of the normally functioning joint fluid in your knee. But this is like a jello that we put in people's knee. And we sometimes mix that with PRP, platelet-rich plasma, where we take your blood and spin it. Platelets are anti-inflammatory. We'll mix that with the gel. And that gives people's knees a different level of functionality. So they're able to do more activities, able to build more muscle, which then leads to less knee pain. And so there's the vast majority of people are between my knee hurts and they're arthritic and I need a knee replacement. Most people live in that in-between space. And so
Mm.
that's my space. That's where I get people to try and do the most they can with the knees they got.
Well, and I know lots of people have an acute injury, maybe like skiing, and they'll, pop their tendon or ligament or something and have to have surgery, whatever. That's a subset of people. But what are you seeing most as the biggest cause for knee pain for those who don't have the acute injury? Like
Yeah,
what's
so
causing this?
it depends on their age demographic, but generally there's some wear inside their knee, and as that wear happens over time, it just becomes more painful. And
Mm-hmm.
so the problem, the body has a built-in system of reflex inhibition. So something hurts and you do less, you get weaker. You get weaker, it hurts more. You do less, it gets weaker. And so you have this system where I stay off it, it gets weaker, and it atrophies around that joint. So it hurts and it's weaker, and then everything kind of cascades. So the way I think about it is, what's the injury? What's the problem? How do I reduce the symptoms in the joint? And then how do I build back the muscle around the joint to keep it functioning?
Mm-hmm. So, since you've seen a lot of injured knees, do you have a story or can you tell us about a time where you saw an injury actually become the turning point that led someone, to better long-term health?
Certainly, all the time. I mean, listen, injuries are never fun, but I think one of the things that I really strive for is to make my patients and readers smarter. And so I saw a guy just this week who was a marathoner and ended up running into a stress fracture in his knee. He's a lawyer and he doesn't have a ton of time. And he would load his training. And so he'd load in a lot of miles over a short period of time. He would call what I call violate the rule of twos, too much, too fast. Ended up with a stress fracture in his knee and the femur bone, which hurt a lot. Took a
Yikes.
while to get better from. And now that he's better, he's a much smarter runner. Now, what that means is that he's spreading out his training, he's doing more strength training, but he's also graduating what he does in a much more thoughtful fashion instead of just
Sure.
loading everything into a
Yeah.
weekend day. And I think his injury was a big wake up call for him that I have to start doing. It worked when I was 20, it doesn't work when I'm 50. And that he wants to keep running till he's 90. And so, as do many of my patients. And so, that in that scenario, you have to start thinking about what are the variables I can start monitoring and switching.
Mm-hmm. I want to finish with this because this really like hit me in my soul as well because I feel the exact same way. But again, in your book, Push, I read that you said, I've noticed that if I don't push myself, I lose the passion for it. What is it about pushing yourself that keeps you going and builds that passion?
Yeah, there's something about, and I'm actually just working on a column for the Washington Post on the benefits of intensity. And
Yeah.
the reason I called my book Push is I want people to learn to be comfortable pushing themselves mentally, physically, and physiologically. So
Mm,
mentally, I feel like overcoming something hard, there's something different about that that is really rewarding in a very different
sure.
way. I think physically, there's a lot of benefits to becoming comfortable being uncomfortable. If you don't become a little bit comfortable being uncomfortable, you just kind of stay exactly where you are. And physiologically, especially with aging, I have people in their 80s. One of the lines I have in my article is, "Yes, your grandmother can do burpees, and she should." That I want you to be comfortable pushing your physiology because we know that when you huff and puff, it leads to a whole host of health characteristics which are great for you. You build and maintain muscle, you build and maintain mitochondria. You just become a more efficient version of yourself. And so thinking about pushing yourself physiologically. So the idea of push is I want you to become comfortable being uncomfortable and learning how to make that a part of your life.
And so many people don't feel comfortable being uncomfortable. Yeah, psychologically, they want to get out of it. They want to put their head in the sand, ignore a hard conversation, walk away. That has been my bent psychologically for sure. But physically, I feel like this is actually a place where I've grown, which informs my psyche as well. When I do hard things in a workout, we competed in something called Fem Sport. It was kind of like strong women meet tough mudder competition where you're flipping a tire, pushing a car, you're doing hard things. It's tough, but wow, the confidence, the passion, the excitement, the belief, like all of that grew inside.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah. So I love that. Well, thank you, sir, for your time today. That was really insightful. And you've written Push, but other books as well. Can you tell people where they can follow you, find you, work with you, and get your books?
Thank you so much. Yes, it was lovely to chat with you. Thanks so much for having me. So all my books, this is my fifth book about the interface of medicine and fitness for preventive health. And so they're all available on Amazon. Push is unique in that I asked you to do an audiobook as well. And so you'll hear me trying to guide you through. So hopefully you can listen to that on a walk or a run. You can follow me on social media at Dr. Jordan Metzl. And I actually have an interesting thing which I'm starting next week, which is I have a first AI me, which I get questions from all over the world on different channels, and I can't answer any of them. So medical things I see in my office, but like how do I get the right running shoes, or how do I train for a 5K, or what? So I'm working with a company that you'll see on my social coming up of an AI me, where you can basically write me any question, and I've uploaded every article, book, lecture I've ever given over 25 years, and you get some distillation of everything I thought about that subject. So it's kind of cool.
Of course, they have that now. Of course they do. I'm going to have to get an AI me as well.
You deserve it. Absolutely. It's amazing the amount of crap you say over years, but it's kind of fun to see it all in one place.
And reiterate over and over and over and over and over, right? Yeah. Awesome. Okay, well, I will drop all of those links that he referred to, his handles, the books down in the show notes. So please take a look there. Thanks again for being my guest today.
I really enjoyed it. Wonderful interview. Thank you.
And to all of you now, go move daily in your fitness, your wellness, your nutrition, and we'll see you all in the next Move Daily Talks.